Today's episode is about John DeLorean. He was famous for building cars back in Detroit and then eventually going to Ireland to build the DeLorean car that was going to change the industry on automaking. However, he got involved in drug dealing, big drug dealing, and got caught. And he was tried. Fascinating case. And we're going to go into the facts about how was he prosecuted and what was the outcome for John DeLorean. Well, what is our topic today? Does crime pay? Well, we're going to be discussing the John DeLorean case. And who was John DeLorean? Well, his father was Romanian, his mother was Austrian. They were a family living in Detroit. His father worked for the Ford Motor Company, so he kind of grew up with cars, kind of a middle-class family, and he was very interested in engineering, and he went to college, got a Bachelor of Science degree in industrial engineering, and then went on to the Chrysler Institute of Engineering. Did very, very well there. And then on to law school. Never graduated, but he got an MBA. So a lot of education on his part. During the same period of time, back in 1954, he got married. His first wife was Elizabeth Higgins, and they lived there in Detroit. And he was working for PACKARD Motor Company, and it was kind of an old stodgy line. It was kind of a luxurious car. It had been manufactured for years and years in Detroit. So he starts climbing up the corporate ladder at PACKARD Motors and did very, very well there. It didn't take him long to go to the very top and become the head of engineering. And he made major changes to the Packard. No longer a stodgy old car. It was quite a modern car. So he did very, very well there and got noticed. However, PACKARD Motors just couldn't compete with the big three, and it went under. They were bought out by Studebaker. So he lost his job there at PACKARD. And he was looking for a job, and General Motors, noticed him and said, "Hey, why don't you come with us? Where would you like to work?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to work at Pontiac Motor Division." And they said, "Fine." So he came on board at Pontiac in 1956, worked very, very hard there, and helped immeasurably in the engineering department. They got a lot of awards for the new techniques of building these cars, and he started what was called the GTO. Made Pontiac very, very famous with young people. It was called a muscle car back in 1964. It was attractive. It was kind of sporty, so it did very, very well for the Pontiac Motor Division. However, but his big claim to fame was the Firebird. It was a sports car that everyone loved. It was sporty looking as well. It had a powerful engine. So that was a big hit for Pontiac. And he also developed a luxury car for Pontiac, and it was the Grand Prix. So he did a lot for Pontiac, putting him on the map. Now, he had a second wife. When he was there at Pontiac, he divorced his first wife, Higgins, and he married Kelly Harmon. Now, she was very attractive and quite young. She was 19 years old. She was a model in the entertainment business, and quite a attractive couple that the two of them made. And who was she? Who was Kelly Harmon? Well, she was the daughter of Tom Harmon, the Heisman Trophy winner in football, at UCLA, and her brother was Mark Harmon, the quarterback for UCLA, and then went on to become quite a movie star and TV star. So that was Kelly Harmon, and she did very, very well. And as I say, she was the second wife of John DeLorean. Now, John DeLorean's career went on with General Motors. Chevrolet was having some problems, so what we'd call major challenges in 1969. So they brought him from Pontiac over to Chevrolet to see if he could straighten things out. Things were really in disarray because of Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, about the Chevy Corvair and all the accidents that it was having because it had an engine in the back. And John DeLorean got in there and helped solve the problem there. But then he took on the Impala. What a classic car was the Impala. So that helped the image of Chevrolet. But they wanted to have a cheaper car that would be less expensive, and they came up with the Vega. But the Vega came with all sorts of issues, and it took John DeLorean several years to... Eventually, General Motors recognized John DeLorean's talent, and he went to the very top. He became a vice president of General Motors. It was just a matter of time before he would most likely be the CEO of General Motors, the largest auto-making company in the world. And what could be better for an individual whose father worked at Ford Motor Company to be the head of General Motors eventually? However, it didn't work out. He clashed with a lot of the other executives at the top floor of General Motors. And then all of a sudden, one day, he walked out of General Motors and resigned, saying he was going to have nothing to do with any of the companies in Detroit. And he wrote a book in 1979 that was very, very critical of General Motors and Detroit overall. And it was titled, On a Clear Day, You Can See General Motors. Not at all flattering at all. We have a young lady by the name of CRISTINA Ferrare who comes into John DeLorean's life in 1972. Now, she is a model, and she is also the spokesperson for Max Factor. And besides that, CRISTINA was being noticed. How could she not be noticed? She was so hot on the magazine of Cosmopolitan, and John DeLorean noticed her, and he filed for divorce of his wife, Kelly Harmon, and all of a sudden, they start dating, and they get married in 1973, and there is no question she was a trophy wife. Wow. Even though there were 30 years difference between their ages, what a power couple, a dynamic duo. She comes from the entertainment world, and he comes from the auto world. Wow. Life is very, very good for John DeLorean and CRISTINA. They're living the good life. They have houses all over the place. They have a family that they are growing. So you could say it really couldn't get any better. However, John DeLorean wanted to develop a new type of car, something out of the realm of Detroit. He had a lot of ideas how it could be done. And he came up with this idea of it's kind of like a sports car, a total different design. It would have a brushed stainless steel body, and it had these gullwing doors, would set it apart from other cars, and it would be powered by a V6 Renault engine in the rear. Well, he decided to come up with the DeLorean Motor Company. And the whole idea was to be able to build a better and cheaper car. Could it be done? Well, he started out, he needed money. Money to develop this new type of car. And he had a lot of friends in the entertainment industry because of CRISTINA, Johnny Carson. And these people invested their money, millions of dollars they were willing to give to John DeLorean so that he could build this sports car. But he needed a huge amount of money, and it came from the British government. The British government gave him £100 million if he would set up the plant in Northern Ireland. And he agreed he would do that. As a result of that, he got all that money to invest in this plant. And where is it going to be? It's going to be in Dunmurry, Northern Ireland, just outside of Belfast. Most likely, maybe a 50-minute drive. Dunmurry plant, it is going to be so modern, and it's going to have everything auto manufacturer needs. And that's the plant. And he sets it up with an assembly line that was, so streamlined. Everything had a place, and it was going to be well organized. Things were stored in a place and pulled from there when they were needed, and it just revolutionized the production of automobiles. One of the side benefits, it was going to be highly efficient so that the cars could be produced at less expense. And that's why they were called the DMC-12, because they were going to be sold for $12,000. Wow, you're going to have a very efficient organization to be able to do that. Now, it got a reputation with movies. Back to the Future had a DeLorean. It was used in all of the scenes there. Got a lot of notoriety as a result of that. They were highly successful at manufacturing. As a matter of fact, they were able to produce 9,000 cars. What? Well organized. All these DeLoreans, they're almost identical, just a few minor changes in each of them. But they weren't successful as far as sales. They were not able to sell that many. They were eventually able to sell 6,000 DeLorean cars. Now, what's the problem? What is going on here? Well, it turns out it was the middle of a recession, and people were cutting back on buying cars, and the cars were not being sold at $12,000. They were more in the price range of $25,000 to $29,000. And this put them out of the market of mainstream America and Europe. The power train in it was not sufficient for a sports car, and they didn't perform real well. So these were things that were going against the DeLorean sales. Now, they couldn't sell them, but they had produced them, but now they're out of money. They can't pay a payroll, and they can't pay for the new supplies that they need. They're going to have to declare bankruptcy. They're insolvent. Wow. What's going to happen? Well, the British government, they decided they were going to bail them out. Now, DeLorean was going to lose a little bit of control. It was called the UK Consortium Plan, and it was going to save his business, and he went along with it. He would be willing to do it. However, Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister, and she rejected it. She would not go along with the UK Consortium. Wow. Why? Well, it was learned later on, she was a very close friend of President Ronald Reagan, and Reagan loathed, John DeLorean setting up the plant in Northern Ireland. He felt it should have been in the United States, especially in Detroit. So he was able to persuade Margaret Thatcher not to go along with the consortium plan. Now, this put DeLorean in a tight box because he can't get money. He can't get money from the banks. He's not able to get anybody to loan him money. What's he going to do? Well, he heard about drug business. You can make a lot of money very, very fast in selling drugs. And that's true. And there's no income tax that you have to pay on drug profits. So this was the perfect thing that was going to save his company. So he has a meeting on October 19th, 1982 in a hotel in the Westwood area of Los Angeles. He's in room 501. And there he is. You can see him. He's in there. He's trying to negotiate a drug deal. And here you can see, there he is. He's explaining here. He said, here's to a lot of success to everybody and for all those phone calls. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He's there to buy cocaine. And there is a briefcase of huge amount of cocaine. And he has a satchel there full of $24 million in cash. Within a short period of time, he's going to be able to sell all that cocaine that he was going to buy for over $100 million. This will save his DeLorean company. And he says to the drug dealer there, it is as good as gold. As he picks up that cocaine and stands up, is about ready to leave, and then all of a sudden, FBI agents come out of every door, every closet there, and he's arrested for a drug transaction, and he's taken into custody. Well, the headlines were Auto Biggie and 24 million in coke. Things are not going well. John DeLorean's world has been turned upside down. And he's the butt of every joke. And here it is. Things are better with Coke. A bumper sticker on a DMC-12. Wow. Well, what is he going to do? He's got criminal charges filed against him. He's out on bail. He hires Howard Weitzman to be his attorney. Now, Howard Weitzman and I go back a long ways. We both were at USC Law School at the same time. I got to know him there. Howie was an interesting attorney. He always had a different idea as to how cases should be handled. And even though there's a videotape of John DeLorean buying this cocaine with $24 million in cash, he's coming up with this entrapment defense. Now, is this going to sell? Is a jury going to buy this entrapment defense? Well, that's going to be the question. Eventually, the federal trial begins in April of 1984. And here's John DeLorean and CRISTINA going to the federal courthouse. And every day at the end of the session, Howie Weitzman, a defense attorney, would walk out the back doors of the courthouse and stand on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse, and he would spin the facts of what happened in the courtroom that day. It was every single day. It was April, May, June, and even into August. There was all these news conferences on the courthouse steps. And there was CRISTINA, the loyal wife, standing next to her man. She stood by her man, John DeLorean. Wow. So it wasn't until August that the jurors got the verdict, came back not guilty. John DeLorean was found not guilty of this drug transaction that was videotaped. Wow. Well, you have to remember, it's the year 1984, and well, if you remember Orwell, that was going to be a different year, 1984, and it was. Well, it wasn't too long after that, she filed for divorce. Yeah, he won the case in court, but he lost his wife and he lost his family. So, was John DeLorean such a big winner? Maybe yes, maybe no. What happened to the DeLorean plant in Northern Ireland outside of Belfast? It all came tumbling down. There wasn't any money to produce any more cars, so the plant was shuttered. And the test track, this was the test track that every DMC-12 was tested on. It had fallen into disrepair. You can see the fence was caving in on the test track. John DeLorean was having all sorts of problems. There was lawsuit after lawsuit against him for defrauding people, especially people who he took their money and put it in this plant that didn't make it. Eventually, he had to declare bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy, to get all of those cases resolved. And it wasn't until about 2001. And he's selling stainless steel wristwatches. They were very similar to his DeLorean car. And he sold them for $3,495. However, he wasn't able to sell very many of them. And then again, another failure in business for John DeLorean. Well, I guess you could say that John DeLorean had a full life. No doubt about it. And on his tombstone is a DMC-12 with the gull wings up. And you wonder, okay, what has happened to all of those DMC-12s? Well, as a matter of fact, people love them. And they're a big collector's item. And there isn't a parade that doesn't go on without a DMC-12 in it. There's still 6,000 of those DeLorean cars still going. And you say, okay, now where do those gull wings come from? Is there a repeat of history? Because we see the Tesla. Now, the Tesla doesn't call them gull wings. They call them butterfly wings, but they put it on their new Teslas. And where does these gull wing doors come from? Where was the first one? Well, it was Mercedes. Mercedes did it back in 1956. That was the first gull wing car. Well, what has happened to CRISTINA Ferrare? Well, she is still out there. She's not doing as much television. She's had some health problems, but her daughters have done very, very well, and they have joined her in a number of her ventures with Oprah Winfrey, other TV. Did a lot of television all over the years. Now, as far as the John DeLorean story, well, there was a movie made of it called The Framing of John DeLorean in 2019, as well as there was another movie released at the same time called Driven. Why? Why is his story continuing to be told? Well, think about it. Maybe John DeLorean was bigger than life, and that's why his story continues and may continue forever. Well, if you found this John DeLorean case fascinating, please subscribe. We generally have a new podcast come out every Friday at 3 p.m. Well, hopefully you'll join us again for another True Crime Files of Los Angeles, when we discuss another case from beginning to end. See you then.